You are listening to the podcast for learning the language of A Course in Miracles so you can understand the meaning, embody the message, and live the teachings as a way of life. Welcome to episode 55 of this podcast. I'm your host, Reverend Jennifer McSween, creator of this podcast, and the Course in Miracles practice coach for taking those who are studying the course from information to application. This week's episode is workbook lesson number 4, and the title is, These Thoughts Do Not Mean Anything. They are like the things I see in this room, on this street, from this window, in this place. This lesson continues along the same line that lends support to the workbook's opening theme of the meaninglessness of the world and everything in it, because it's all an illusion. The main point of this lesson is to help us realize that it is not only what we see in different forms in the world that has no meaning, but that our thoughts about what we see, what we think or are thinking that we know about them, mean nothing either. As will be explained in later lessons, our thoughts are no different from what we perceive. The inner world of our mind and the outer world of form we perceive are one and the same, because it is really our perception, the way we look at something, that determines what we think about what we see. This idea reflects one of the core premises of A Course in Miracles, which is that only what is of God is true and real, and must share the same attributes of God. In other words, something that is true and real will be of the same one constant and unchanging nature as God. Anything that does not cannot be of God, so it is therefore not real, does not exist, and must be inherently meaningless, because it is separate from what alone has meaning. Both our perception and our thoughts, or thinking, are variable. They're not constant. They are constantly changing. So by definition, are not and cannot be of God. Therefore, neither what we perceive nor our thoughts about what we perceive are real or true, and as a result, are meaningless. Now, this lesson aims to do 4 key things. First, to help us take the first steps in recognizing the difference between truth and illusion, or what is real and illusory. Second, to begin learning to separate the meaningless from the meaningful. Third, to prepare our mind for the long-range purpose of seeing the meaningless as outside you and the meaningful within. And fourth, to train your mind to recognize what is the same and what is different. Now, the idea that the thoughts within our minds are as meaningless as our perceptions, what we see outside us, is because what is outside is unreal. And our thoughts constantly, if not always, revolve around and have something to do with something outside. And keep in mind that even if what we are thinking, the specifics of what we are thinking pertains to something within or about our bodies, it is still about something outside, because the body, or seeing yourself as a body, is nothing but a thought of separation in the mind. It is therefore meaningless and unreal and not of God. Because you see, a body in or of any form is by nature something separate, changeable, and not of the same united, unchangeable nature as God. So this means that I, as a body, or you, as a body, are something separate, outside, and therefore meaningless as well. The overarching purpose of this lesson is to correct the perception that anything in any form has meaning in and of itself, and that we should value anything in any form in the world. We're being led to recognize that there are two thought systems from which we can choose to look at ourselves, each other, and the world, that in turn are the determiner of the way we feel, think about, and ultimately the way we see and experience the world, ourselves and each other, and along with everything in the world. Also, we're being led to understand the nature or content of each of those two thought systems and the relationship between the way we experience every moment, encounter, or situation, or ourselves and each other, and which of the two thought systems we choose. So this lesson wants us to learn the sameness of the content of each respective or the respective thought systems. That is, that the ego's thought system of the world is real rests on the idea, or the content is that of the idea that the separation happened, and always will have us perceiving and experiencing ourselves as victims of or victimized by the world. While the Holy Spirit's thought system rests on the truth, or consists of the content that all that is taking place in every moment, encounter, or situation is that we're experiencing the thoughts and ideas in our mind in different forms. This thought system will change both our perception of the world and ourselves and each other, and the way we experience everything in the world, including ourselves and each other. Now, in telling us that our thoughts do not mean anything, that they're just as meaningless as our perceptions, the things we see outside us, we're being made to feel very humble, okay? And this is not to belittle us, but to have us realize that we really do not know the difference between what is good or bad, or harmful or harmless. Similar to what we're told in the text, that we don't know the difference between joy and pain, and imprisonment and freedom. So we pointlessly preoccupy ourselves with pursuing what will hurt us, completely unaware of what alone will help us. So by making us feel humble, this lesson puts us on the path to recognizing what is truly meaningful and the true source of peace, joy, freedom, or healing that we mistakenly look for in different forms in the world. And this way, we can't help but become a little more willing to question our beliefs about the world and its effects, and as the cause of our feelings. So that's it for this week and this week's lesson. Thank you for listening to this episode of Understanding the Language of A Course in Miracles podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, please share it with those you know through whatever means or platform to which you have access. And leave me a review on iTunes so that others can hear about it and enjoy it and or find it helpful also. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do so that you don't miss another episode. Thanks again for listening, and see you on the podcast next Wednesday.